Why people need to take psychotherapy service when many people in the world manage without taking this support?
Of course, whether or not you seek psychotherapy or don't seek psychotherapy is a very personal choice. And I don't necessarily think that it depends on the level of psychological or mental health that will determine whether or not you need psychotherapy. I myself find going to see one of my colleagues for some therapy when I feel that it would be helpful very inspiring and wonderful, and equivalent to maybe talking to my Buddhist Lama and with a question or something like that. It's something that I seek, not because I feel I'm mentally unstable or psychologically disturbed or anything like that. But at the same time, I also think that the lives that we are, the circumstances that people grow in and are surrounded by, can be healing or damaging at any time. Like we can be culturally or socially well supported, or can be culturally and socially attacked and unsupported and deprived and privileges taken away. Yes. So I'm not sure. Like I'm not necessarily thinking that somebody, if I meet somebody and they are psychologically not very healthy, that I would necessarily think you have to go and see a psychotherapist. I might not think that that might be the right path for them. That maybe seeing their doctor and getting some medication could be a better thing, or making an adjustment with their job when they have a really punitive job environment, or their family or whatever, could be just as healing for them as going to see a psychotherapist. I think to take the full worth out of psychotherapy, there has to be a willingness to open up, to deepen the self-knowledge, to find out who you are, and also to discover what you could be more than what you already are.
It's a very significant sentence. To know you more than who you are. This is
Yes.
and to extend to that, two perspectives I want to state, which got stimulated through the conversation, and take your perspective on that. One of the statement is psychotherapy is too good to be limited for problems.
Ah,
I think this is said by Fritz Perls, if I remember, or one of the Gestalt perspectives. So, what is your thinking on this?
I'm not so sure about that. I think that this comes back to my belief that psychotherapy in itself is nothing. Psychotherapy is working in a relationship, being connected to another human being, and that can be working well or not working so well. It can be a good match, or it can be not such a good match, and I mean, coming back to what I said earlier, that my best teachers have been my difficult clients, and I still believe that because they challenged me profoundly, and so on. But however, I think psychotherapy can be totally ordinary, or it can be highfalutin, maybe like some analysis that has all these rules of what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do, or what you're allowed to be or not allowed to be. And so then that I would think, yeah, well, that is sort of up there and not so focused on the you and I together in this moment, triggering things in each other and reacting to each other. Yes.
I think that's the key. I think when psychotherapy as a process is is contained through relationships. So it's about the match, and the sometimes
Yes.
match, bad match, we don't know, but it's a process
Yes.
of that connection.
Yes.
Thanks, Charlotte, for that. I'm expanding one more perspective on that. Is there is a perspective here in India about the clinical psychology, or the I'm sometimes having a conflict in some way, to see as a people as clinical, or being clinicized with labels, disorders, or pathology.
Hmm.
Um, However, there is some usefulness to it also. It's not that I can totally deny it. So, what is your perspective on the clinical perspective, which is added to psychotherapy?
Yes. You know, all the knowledge that I have gained over the years, I value.
Mm.
Uh, I value the fact that I can recognize a disorder or diagnose a condition, and then have some ideas of what might respond to that best. Not because I believe that we have to do that in a kind of a prescribed way, but because that knowledge is just in me. And so I'm talking to somebody, and I may recognize something in their speech pattern, or in their, well, in transactional analysis, something that is scripty. I can recognize something like that. I find that very useful to have that theory, but in the moment, I may not actually think theory. In the moment of being with this person, I may not have that theory consciously in my mind, but I do value all the knowledge that I have about, even about the brain, and even about the things that we never see. And yes, I don't think that I don't respond well to some of these newer models of doing therapy, where everything is very clearly prescribed, and even the amount of time spent, and how short the sessions, and how many sessions, and all of that. I don't respond so well. I think that some people get cured, if you believe in cure, in one session, and some people need 10 years with a therapist. And it's the individual necessity that matters, not necessarily the theory, or yeah, the diagnosis, or the psychological knowledge.
Thank you for stating that, because the value and the wisdom which has been generated through observations are very useful. At the same time, it need not be made as a prescription. That is where you are coming with.
Yeah.
Because this wisdom helps to understand the client in some way, and it can also help to enhance the relationship and find meaning. In that way,
Yes.
this knowledge can be very valuable.
Of course, of course. And then that raises the question: do you share what you see, or do you not share? And if you can say to somebody, what I'm hearing is that you are depressed, and for some people to suddenly have a name of their pain is very helpful. And for other people, you actually know that that wouldn't be a good idea. So it's not that you should share this knowledge, or that you should not share this knowledge, but that you have to suss out what the real, the best thing is in the moment.
Yeah, I think this is very important, because I heard a situation where a person said that you are a borderline to another person, and
Ah,
then this person
yes.
got into a much more difficult to manage this sentence from a professional. So,
Yes, but that sounds like an accusation, or that's not useful. And then this brings up a story. I don't know if do we have time for a little
yeah,
story?
please go ahead.
But some years ago, a young woman came to me, and she was had been diagnosed as having a borderline personality disorder, and she was needing to see her psychiatrist, and so she went to see the doctor, and then the doctor had to be called out of the office for something, and so she went to his desk and she saw his notes and she saw that it said borderline personality disorder, and so she came to me, her therapist, and she was outraged, and she said, I'm never going back to that psychiatrist. And I saw that word, and then I sort of I remember clearly I smiled and said, yeah, that must have been a shock. Let's find out more. And I took my DSM and I looked at borderline, and we looked through the criteria, and no, that's not her. Oh yeah, that is a bit her. And then she looked with me through that, and that by the end I could say, yeah, and this used to be you, but it's not you anymore. And then she got quite excited. And so rather than being shocked that she had seen the borderline word, the bad word, I kind of went and explored it with her in that playful way. And the ending was so lovely.
Yeah, this is wonderful.
So that's an example where even the negative word, like borderline personality disorder, was used constructively in recognizing aspects of herself that she hadn't actually named before or thought about before.
This is a beautiful way you have held and then expanded in that process.
Yes. It's a good story. I like it too.
The purpose of this video recording is also to capture this wisdom so that we become sharing this knowledge can help the other person also in some way. So at what point as a therapist we have a permission to say name, or for example, I think these seems to be symptoms of depression, or not to state it at all? At what point, how do you gauge it?
Yes, I think a lot of that is quite intuitive, and I wish I could be clearer to answer your question. I think that for some people, for one person to be told that they are psychotic will be a very unhelpful thing, and for another person it will be a recognition of what is going on with them, and you would have to be careful. And of course sometimes you could make a mistake and you could say something and it could be damaging, or you could hold back something and it might have been helpful if you hadn't held it back. Yeah. But I think it's more like an intuitive knowing whether it would be helpful. Or maybe sometimes I might ask, like, might it help you if I gave you a description of what I'm observing? And then if they say yes, then we can kind of do it almost a little bit in dialogue.
Yeah.
Then it's not as harsh as using psychological terminology.
Yeah, I think this is
Yes.
interesting because there is a permission involved and the client is prepared to hear.
Yes.
I think even after hearing the reactions of the client can be, if it is held enough, I think that may be useful. So I think this is a possibility, I see. Thank you
Yes.
for this.